They told me the portrait had been in the attic for as long as anyone in town could remember. They were wrong. It had been in the house, watching me, long before I ever climbed the stairs. The first time I saw those faces, I thought it was a trick of the light. 5 figures pressed into an oil frame, their clothes faded to the color of old tea, their eyes empty as coin holes. But the mouths were real, the collars real, the hands, human hands, folded polite and still. The faces were dogs. I moved into the house because people leave things behind in small towns. Unpaid mortgages, rotting furniture, the quiet promise of a new start. The house smelled like the last person who lived there had been a smoker who also kept jars of pickles in the bedroom, sour and cloying, a varnish of other people's days. At night, the pipes sang like distant wails, and somewhere below the floorboards, a small creature scraped for dinner. The first few nights, I slept with the lights on, a single lamp painting the doorway in a small pool of assurance. The portrait hung in the dining room, half hidden behind a moth-eaten curtain, and whenever I made coffee, it seemed to look up at me with those black, hollow sockets. You know how the air tastes when a storm is coming? It tasted like that in the house, metallic and cold, like the memory of blood. I noticed small things at first, a dog bone by the back door that wasn't mine, a damp patch in the corner of the pantry shaped like a handprint, a faint smell of wet fur, though I don't own any pets. The mail came with a postcard addressed to the previous owner, an image of a smiling family under a caption that read "Dog Family" in block letters. Someone had painted over the faces on that postcard as well, crude, blank circles where eyes should have been. On the third night, I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, not the scuffle of mice. I lay very still and listened to the woods settle and to my own heart, which sounded too loud in the narrow dark. When I finally pushed my feet to the floor and turned on the bedside lamp, the house was empty. The kitchen light was still off, the curtains closed. But then I noticed the portrait. The curtain had been pulled aside an inch, like a finger drawing breath. The faces looked closer somehow, the paint grain leveled into the sheen of actual skin. My throat went dry. I told myself it was insomnia, exhaustion, an overactive imagination fed by late-night news and old houses. That is how it begins, slowly, a doubt in the eye, an explanation that fits perfectly until it doesn't. You accept rational reasons because they keep you sane. You wash the cup with hot water and breathe in the steam, telling yourself that you are alone. And yet the house keeps collecting evidence, a ring of hair around the drain, scratches on the stair rail like claws testing the banister, and the portrait hums in the corner of your mind like an unanswered ringtone. It was around the 5th night when I realized the portrait had changed. Not at first, just a tilt of a head, a shadow that hadn't been there before, but the kind of small betrayal that lodges under your skin. I took a picture with my phone because that's what people do now. They document to later explain away what their nerves won't let them forget. The photo showed the left child's head cocked, listening, like a dog waiting for the snap of a leash. In the morning, the canvas looked unchanged. The photo did not. After that, I stopped sleeping. I would lie awake with my palms slick on the sheets, the house making whatever noises empty houses make, pipes that sigh, the lawn tail buzz of a transformer, and imagine the portrait leaning, its blank eyes concentrating on me like holes drilled through a door. Sometimes the lamp would buzz and go soft, and in that thin light, the paint seemed wet, the varnish breathing. Once I pressed my fingertips to the frame in the middle of the night and felt, unmistakably, warmth, human warmth. I jerked back so hard I smacked my elbow on the bedside table. The sound of my own pain made the house laugh, or so it felt. Faster now, the evidence stacked in small, accusatory piles. A wet patch on the dining room floor in the shape of an oval paw. A child's shoe, too small to be mine, tucked under the couch. The smell that came after these things. Not quite animal, not quite rot, a metallic milk-sour stench that clung to the throat and made my tongue taste like old pennies. Once in the hallway, I heard breathing that matched none of mine. It was soft, nostril-sifted, like someone trying to keep from being heard, and layered under it, as if playing from the attic, came a lullaby hummed badly out of tune. I started finding photographs. They were tucked into drawers, slipped beneath the mattress. Polaroids of the house across the years, the same family standing where the portrait now hung, only in the older photos, their faces were whole human faces. In the last 3, though, something terrible had been done with a brush or an eraser. The faces were scraped into blank ovals, the eyes removed with clinical patience. One of the Polaroids showed my kitchen with the kettle on, steam rising, and in the reflection of the kettle, impossibly, I could see a figure standing in the doorway. Me, but with no eyes, a pale oval where my irises should have been. Neighbors avoided my gaze when I asked about the previous owners. A woman down the street muttered something about children who loved dogs too much. An old man crossed himself and said best not to poke into old grief. I dug through public records and found a birth certificate with the same surname and a date that made my stomach fall. The child's name matched the collar I found on my pillow that morning, a tiny collar, leather and cracked, stamped with initials that were not mine. When the house finally spoke back, a whisper at the base of my skull, not heard but felt, a pressure like a paw on the back of my neck, it didn't form words I could repeat. It left impressions, hunger, waiting, and the soft, terrible sense that I had been invited to belong. The nights grew thinner, like pages someone had ripped from a book. I could no longer tell where the house ended, and my imagination began. They braided together until my thoughts had the texture of wallpaper, patterned, flaking, stuck to the paste of fear. I stopped taking the long way home. I stopped leaving the lights off. I started talking aloud to the empty rooms as if conversation could armor me. "You're not real," I'd say. "You can't touch me." The house answered in small, escalating ways. A spoon shifted in the sink while I washed my hands. A chair scraped the floor, though no one sat in it. And the portrait, always the portrait, gathered the dark like a sponge. The turning point came on a morning that smelled like boiled cabbage and old metal. I had been awake for 2 days, a nightless animal pacing between the kitchen and the dining room. And when daylight finally leaked thin through the curtains, the portrait was gone from the wall. For a beat, a dangerous, hopeful beat, I felt relief so sharp it hurt. I picked up the frame and turned it over, expecting to find only canvas and backing. Instead, the back was warm and slick, and when I peeled away the paper, there was nothing behind the canvas but a hollow, as if someone had carved a nest out of the wall and placed my certainty inside it. That afternoon, the house began to rearrange itself. Doors I had always closed stood open. Drawers I never touched were pulled out a notch, as if someone had been looking for something and grew impatient. The children's toothbrushes reappeared in a cup by the sink, though I had thrown them away weeks ago. And at the heart of it, a small, absurd detail. The couch where I slept now smelled faintly of puppy breath and old milk, as if a living thing had lain there only moments before. When the sound finally arrived, it was not the slam of a door or the groan of timber. It was a chorus of small, wet noises, like mouths learning how to shape a word. They came from the walls, from the attic, from the soft dark under the stairs. I pressed my palms to my ears, and the noise multiplied, nesting inside my skull, until all I could do was follow it. The hallway light threw one long, thin rectangle across the floor, and in that rectangle the family stood, not the painted flatness, but a depth that sucked at the edges of the light. The adults were still statues, collars starched and hands folded. The children moved. One of them stepped forward, the same head that had tilted in the photo, and when it came close, I could see the texture of its face. Skin that caught the light like bone, a surface too smooth and pale, and the hollow of the eyes deep and patient. It reached up with a small hand and touched my cheek. The contact was cool and faintly damp, like a tongue. I did not scream because there was a new understanding between us then, a contract signed in the language of touch. I understood what they wanted. They wanted me to stay. I fled through the back door, but the yard was different, flattened as if walked by many paws. The neighbors' houses looked farther away, as if the world had thickened around mine and left me in a bubble. When I ran back inside to retrieve my keys, the portrait sat on the dining table, paint glistening as if freshly applied. And in the frame, the family smiled in a way the old photographs had never captured. Not human, not quite dog, and entirely satisfied. I write this with my hands still trembling because I am not certain if I escaped. The collar I found under my pillow that night was small and familiar, and when I put it on my throat, tightened in a way that felt like home. They do not ask much. They only want someone who will look at them and know them back. I closed the door once. Now I keep it open. They have been waiting for me.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.